Hello friends and welcome back. In this video we will be learning in detail about the centric relation. In this session we will be discussing about the definition, review of literature, theories of centric relation, significance of centric relation, interrelation between centric relation and occlusion, methods of retruding mandible and methods of recording centric relation. So what is centric relation? It's a bone-to-bone relation in which the condylar head articulates with the glenoid fossa of the temporal bone. That is, it is a bone-to-bone relationship. That is, the bonds which are coming in contact is the condyle and the temporal bone. Coming to the definition. Centric relation is a maxillomandibular relationship independent of tooth contact in which the condyles articulate in the anterior superior position against the posterior slopes of the articular eminences. In this position, the mandible is restricted to a purely rotary movement. From this unstrained physiologic maxillomandibular relationship, the patient can make vertical, lateral or protrusive movement. It's a clinically useful, repeatable reference position. Okay, now let's have a look at the changing definition of the centric relation over the years. In 1920, McCollum defined centric relation as the rearmost condylar position, whereas in 1962, Granker defined it as the upmost rearmost condylar position, and in 1969, Stuart has described it as the rearmost, uppermost and the midmost condylar position. In 1977, American Equilibration Society challenged the RUM position and proposed the most anterior and uppermost position of the condyle opposite the slope of articular eminentia as the centric relation. Celenza in 1978 stated that condyle disc assembly is braced superiorly and anteriorly against the posterior slope of the eminentia. Presently, it is believed that anterior surface of condyle is in apposition with the thinnest central portion of articular disc, and this disc condyle assembly is seated and braced against the posterior inferior incline of the tubercular eminence of squamous bone in centric position. Coming to the review of literature. In 1910, Sir Alfred Gracie proposed condylar centricity as the condyle occupied the position beneath the concavity of the glenoid fossa. He compared TMJ as a three-legged stool with posterior leg in center of the fossa. In 1920, McCollum suggested the rearmost condylar position. He named this position as centric relation and was the first to record the hinge axis of the mandible. In 1929, Hanno defined centric relation as the position of the mandible in which the condylar heads are resting upon the menisci in the socket of the glenoid fossa regardless of the opening of the jaws, either strained or unstrained, but preferred the unrestrained position. In 1934, Niswonger described centric relation as the position where the patient can clench the back teeth. Schuler in 1935 defined centric position as the upper lingual cusps are resting in the central fossa of the opposing lower bicuspids and molars. Lucia in 1953, in his article about fundamentals of oral physiology, stated that centric relation is the most retruded position into which the muscles of mastication can pull the mandible. The retruded concept was adopted by the Academy of Prosthodontics in GPT 1. So coming to the theories of centric relation, there are mainly four theories of centric relation. They are the muscle theory, the ligament theory, the osteofiber theory and the meniscus theory. Muscle theory, it's also called as myologic theory. It considers centriculation to be a product of defense reflex which causes the external pterygoid muscles to contract and thus to halt the jaw every time the condyles or the interarticular disc approach the posterior superior depth of the glenoid fossa. Then coming to the significance of centriculation, it is the ideal arch to arch relation. In centriculation, the condyles exhibit pure rotation without any translation. Then centriculation is the repeatable, reproducible and recordable position. Then centriculation, its another significance is that it is the most retruded mandibular position. Then it's the starting point for developing occlusion in the complete dentures. The terminal position of masticatory stroke ends in centriculation. It is a terminal hinge position and it orients the lower cast to the opening axis of mandible. Then coming to the interrelation between centriculation and centric occlusion. What is the difference between centriculation and centric occlusion? The centric occlusion is a tooth-to-tooth contact or the position of the upper and lower teeth coming in contact. And what is centric relation? It is the bond-to-bond relation. So, while we are arranging teeth for complete dentures, the centric relation can be used as a guide to develop centric occlusion. So according to the GPT-9, the centric occlusion is defined as the occlusion of opposing teeth when mandible is in centric relation. This may or may not coincide with the maximal intercuspal position. Then this is the definition of centric relation which we already have discussed. Then maximal intercuspal position. What is maximal intercuspal position or MIP? It is the complete intercuspation of the opposing teeth independent of condylar position. The condylar position is not, we are not giving any importance while we are taking consideration of the maximal intercuspal position. We are only considering the complete intercuspation of the opposing teeth. This maximal intercuspal position is sometimes referred to as the best fit of the teeth regardless of the condylar position. Coming to the character of occlusion in centric relation, there are mainly two concepts. One is a point centric concept and second is a long centric. So what is point centric? This happens when the centric relation and centric occlusion coincides. It is a precise location of centric occlusion in centric relation. It is maximum intercuspation seen in centric relation. What is long centric? When centric relation and centric occlusion do not coincide, a freedom is given to close the mandible either into centric relation or slightly to it in centric occlusion with a smooth gliding without affecting and changing the vertical dimension of the occlusion. Okay, in point centric, the centric relation and centric occlusion coincides, whereas in long centric they will not coincide and we are giving a freedom to close the mandible either into centric relation or slightly anterior to it, but we are not changing the vertical dimension. Okay. Then according to Peter Dawson, it is the freedom to close the mandible either into centric relation or slightly anterior to it without varying the vertical dimension at the anterior teeth. Then another term is freedom is in centric. What is freedom in centric? In freedom in centric and centric occlusion coincides, but there is a flat area in the central fossa upon which opposing cusp contacts, which permit a degree of freedom in centric movements influenced by the tooth inclines. Then coming to the difficulties in retruding the mandible. Mainly it can be due to biological or psychological or mechanical. So first is the biological difficulties in retruding the mandible. It can be due to lack of coordination between muscles, or due to habitual eccentric jaw positions, or can be due to neuromuscular disorders. Then sometimes can be due to psychological. It is due to the inability to follow the dentist instructions. And the third one is a mechanical difficulty. It can be due to poorly fitting base plates. Then coming to the methods of retruding mandible. First, instruct the patient by saying, relax your jaw, pull it back and close slowly and easily on your back teeth. Then to push the upper jaw out and close on the back teeth. Or ask the patient to protrude and retrude the mandible repeatedly with finger lightly against the chin. Or to tap the occlusal rings together repeatedly, or tilt the head back. So how the dentist can manipulate mandible into centricalization? There are mainly two methods. One is the manual method, and second one is by the use of reprogrammers. Coming to the manual method, first one is the chin point guidance. It was proposed by Guyshut in 1970. In this, the thumb and forefinger is used to position the condyle into the RUM position. Coming to the method of doing chin point guidance. First, the patient should be seated upright and tell the patient to get relaxed. After that, softened 2-layer wax sheet must be used. First, gently push against the maxillary cusp and then apply registration medium to the mandibular surface. Then patient's mandible is guided into a hinge closure by the thumb and the index finger of the operator. Patient's mandible is guided into a hinge closure by the thumb and index finger of the operator. The main drawback is that while the dentist is doing that, the condyles can be over retruded. Next is the bimanual method. This was proposed by Peter Dawson in 1980. This method will guide the mandible in most superior position. The method is that first recline the patient, then stabilize the head, then lift the patient's chin, again slightly stretch the neck. Gently place the forefingers of each hand on the lower border of the mandible, then bring the thumb together to form a C with each hand. Ensure that the fingers are properly positioned. With a very gentle touch, manipulate the jaw so that it slowly hinges open and close. This technique permits the condyle to be directed anterior superiorly within the glenoid fossa. Next is a 3-finger method. It was proposed by Peter Thomas. In this method, thumb, forefinger and middle finger positions the condyle in anterior superior position. Coming to the method, a tripod is created at the chin point and the lower border of the mandible on both sides by the thumb, index finger and the third finger. This encourages anterior superior placement of the condyles. Then the defect of this method is that it will deflect the mandible to one side. Also, this technique is not recommended for edentulous patients. So we told that two methods are there. First is a manual method and second is the use of deprogrammer. So manual method is over. Now coming to the use of deprogrammers. First is the anterior deprogrammer. So the use of anterior deprogrammers will eliminate the posterior tooth contacts and thus it will eliminate the proprioceptive mechanism. The various types of anterior deprogrammers can be used, that is tongue blade, cotton roll, anterior jig like Lucia jig, Pankey jig, NTI appliance, then leaf gauge, OSU Wiffel gauge. So these are the pictures showing various anterior deprogrammers. Then there are factors which will influence the centriculation recording, that is the resiliency of the supporting tissues, then stability of the recording bases, TMJ and its neuromuscular mechanism, then character of the pressure applied in making the recording. Then the technique used in making the recording, skill of the dentist, health and cooperation of the patient, posture of the patient, different examiner and different recording methods. What is the need to guide the mandible into centriculation? This is for the diagnosis of occlusion, to obtain an interocclusal record, for occlusal correction during occlusal rehabilitation, and also to check the occlusal contacts in restoration. So the aim of this mandibular guidance is to help locate the condylar heads in the glenoid fossa at the terminal hinge axis in a consistent manner, thus producing mandibular closure about the terminal hinge axis. So methods of recording centriculation. There are functional methods, graphic method, and tactile or interocclusal check record method. So under functional methods comes the needle house method, Patterson method. Graphic methods include use of intraoral devices and extraoral devices. To functional methods, Green in 1910 used plaster and pumice mixture in one of the rims. Needles used mounted 3 studs on maxillary rims. Patterson used carborundum and plaster mixture. Mayer used soft wax occlusal rims, tin foil placed and functional movements done. Shanahan used cones of soft wax. Coming to the needles house method. This is one of the most commonly used functional method. It was proposed in 1923. It involves the fabrication of occlusal rims made from impression compound. 4 metal beads or styli are embedded into the premolar and molar areas of the maxillary occlusal rims. The occlusal rims are inserted into the patient's mouth and all the above mentioned factors affecting functional centriculation are considered. The patient is asked to close on the occlusal rim and make protrusive, right and left lateral movements of the mandible. When the patient moves his mandible, the metal styli on the maxillary occlusal rim will create a marking on the mandibular occlusal rim. When all the movements are made, a diamond-shaped marking pattern rather than a line is formed on the mandibular occlusal rim. The posterior-most point of this diamond pattern indicates the centric jaw relation. Next is the Patterson method. This was proposed in 1923. Here, occlusal rims made of modeling wax are used. A trench is made along the length of the mandibular occlusal rim. A 1:1 mixture of carborundum and dental plaster is loaded into the trench. The occlusal rims are inserted and the patient is asked to perform mandibular movements. These movements will produce compensating curves on the plaster carborundum mix. As these movements are made, the height of the plaster carborundum mix is also reduced. The patient is asked to continue this movement till a predetermined vertical dimension is obtained. Finally, the patient is asked to retrude his jaw and the occlusal rims are fixed in this position with metal staples. Mayer in 1934 used soft wax occlusal rims, tinfoils placed and the functional movements are done. Bose in 1940 used gnathodynamometer. Criticism of functional recording method. First one is that it requires very stable record bases. If the record bases are not stable, then the measurement will not be accurate. Second is if there is displaceable basal seed tissues, resistance of recording mediums and lack of control of equalized pressure in the eccentric relations contribute to inaccuracy in these methods. Then third is that patients need to have a good neuromuscular coordination, also must be capable of following instructions if the accurate records are to be obtained. Then how we can seal the two rims together? Either we can use heat, then wax template, or we can use staple pins. Then the common errors that occurs while taking centriclation record is that the tilting of the blocks of the ridges resulting from uneven contact. Then there may be premature contact of the heels of the record blocks leading to displacement or tilting of the blocks. Then heavy contact of the heels of the plaster models which prevent them from being accurately seated in the blocks. Next method is the graphic method. The earliest graphic recordings were based on the studies of mandibular movements by Buckwell in 1866. Hesse in 1897 used needle point tracing. Geissy in 1910 improved the needle point tracing. He used extraoral tracers. Clapp in 1914 attached Geissy tracer directly to the impression trace. Sayers in 1926 placed needle point tracer on the mandibular rim and plate on the maxillary rim, which makes angle of tracing more accurate and discernible. Phillips in 1927 developed plate for upper rim and tripoded ball bearing mounted on the jack screw for the lower rim, which is called the central bearing point. Stansbury in 1929 used curved plate of 4-inch radius mounted on upper rim and central bearing screw attached to the lower plate with 3-inch radius. Hall in 1929 substituted impression compound for centriclation recording. Hardy and Potter described Corbel balancer made depression with a round burr at the apex of the tracing. This is the Corbel intraoral tracing device. Corbel balancer is a type of intraoral central bearing device. The central bearing point is attached with a modeling compound to the upper base plate in the center of the plate. The disadvantage is that it could cause change in the vertical dimension. Pleasure used plastic disc which was attached to the tracing plate with a hole over the apex of the Gothic arch. Silverman used intraoral Gothic arch tracer to locate biting point. Intraoral tracing. Generally, it has a screw-in bearing and tracing device mounted on the maxillary rim and a pad mounted on the mandibular rim. The advantage is that the central bearing pin resists biting pressure, so it can be held in place by means of locking device. The disadvantage is that we cannot observe during tracing, then it is difficult to find the true apex. Extraoral tracing. It is always combined with the intraoral bearing point to distribute equal pressure on the bases. The main extraoral tracer used is height extraoral tracer. The advantage of extraoral tracing is that apex can be easily demarcated, tracings are visible, stylus can be observed in the apex while injecting recording media. The disadvantage is that the lack of equal pressure when the central bearing point moves into eccentric position. Now let's have a look at the intraoral tracing versus extraoral tracing. In intraoral tracing, we cannot observe the tracing, but in extraoral tracing, tracings are visible. In intraoral tracing, it's difficult to find the true apex, whereas in extraoral tracing, apex can be easily demarcated. In intraoral tracing, definitely need a hole at the apex of the tracing. In extraoral tracing, stylus can be observed in the apex while injecting recording media. The disadvantages of extraoral tracing is the lack of equal pressure when a central bearing point moves into the eccentric position. This is the picture showing the technique of graphic method. First, a tentative vertical dimension should be established. The maxillary cars must be mounted in the articulator using face-bore transfer. The mandibular cars should be positioned against the maxillary counterpart in a tentative centric relation and articulated. The mandibular occlusal rim should be reduced to obtain excessive interocclusal distance. The recording plate is attached to the mandibular occlusal rim such that it is at the midline. The stylus or the central bearing point is attached to the maxillary occlusal rim. The recording bases are attached to the recording devices are inserted into the patient's mouth. The central bearing point is retracted to conduct training exercises. The knee excursion guide can be used as an aid to train the patient. The recording plate, which is attached to the mandibular rim, which projects extraorally, is coated with precipitated chalk and denatured alcohol. Intraorally, the central bearing point is positioned to touch the central bearing plate at the predetermined vertical dimension. The patient is asked to perform protrusive, lateral and anteroposterior movements. The tracing is made extraorally by the tracing pointer on the recording plate. The tracing is examined for a sharp apex. Once the recordings are satisfactory, quick setting plaster is injected between the occlusal rims. The assembly is removed and articulated. This is the knee mandibular excursion guide. The next is that we must evaluate the Gothic arch tracing. So the first one is classical pointed form. It indicates an undisturbed movement sequence in the joints and uniform muscle guidance. Next is a classical flat form. It indicates distinct lateral movements of the condyles in the foci. Then the weak Gothic arch tracing. It indicates negligent performance of the movements, most of the backward components. Stronger movements must be demanded from the patient. Asymmetrical form. The tracing indicates a distinct inhibition of the forward movement in the right joint. Then miniature Gothic arch tracing. The tracing points to cramp-like movements, badly fitting and pain-causing record blocks, edentulous state of long standing with inhibited movement in the joint, badly constructed prosthetic appliances, etc. can lead to miniature Gothic arch tracing. Next is vertical line protrudes beyond the arrow point. This tracing was produced either by forcible retraction or pushing of the mandible. It is however possible that the Gothic arch was obtained with a protruded mandible. The important factors that must be considered in graphic recording method is that displacement of the record basis occurs if the central bearing point is off center. It is difficult to locate the center of the true arches to centralize the forces with a central bearing device. It is difficult to stabilize a record base on residual ridge that have no vertical height. It's also difficult to stabilize a record base on tissues that are bent to large awkward tongues. Recording devices are not usually considered compatible with normal physiologic simulation in mandibular movements. The tracing is not acceptable unless a pointed apex is developed. Double tracings usually indicate lack of coordinated movements or recordings at a different vertical dimension of jaw separation. Graphic movements can record eccentric relations of the mandible to the maxillae. Graphic methods are the most accurate visual means of making a centriculation record with mechanical instruments. However, all graphic tracings are not necessarily accurate. Next is the cephalometrics. It is described by Piot and Schaefer. Centriculation and vertical dimension of occlusion were determined by means of cephalometric radiographs. It's impractical and never gained widespread usage. Next is tactile or interocclusal check record. Tactile method is the oldest type. In this method, centric jaw relation, that is tentative centric jaw relation, is recorded by asking the patient to retrude the mandible. The casts are articulated based on the tentative jaw relation. Teeth arrangement is done and an interocclusal registration is made. The tentative jaw relation is verified with the interocclusal record and errors are corrected. It is usually indicated in abnormally related jaws when there is presence of displaceable flabby tissues, in case of large tongue, and in case of uncontrollable mandibular movements, and it can also be done for patients already using a complete denture. Then the materials which are used for taking bite registration or bite recording is they are waxes, plaster, impression compound, bite registration paste, that is zinc oxide eugenol paste, and bite registration silicone. This is the technique for tactile method. That is, the patient is seated with the head upright and supported by headrest. Notches are placed over the maxillary occlusal rim. Facebow transfer and vertical jaw relation are recorded. Tentative centric relation is recorded. Vertical dimensions are verified. Condyle elements of the articulator is adjusted and secured against the centric stops. Maxillary cast is mounted using the Facebow transfer record. Mandibular cast is related according to the achieved centric relation. Mandibular cast is mounted to the articulator. I hope you found this video helpful. Thank you for watching.